This is a 2-year ownership report on my 156 V6 1998. So I bought the car in August 2021. It's not my everyday car. It's a car that I just use at weekends and to go to shows, and just generally if I fancy going out for a drive and the weather's nice, this is the car I'll go in. So when I bought the car, it had just over 24,000 miles on it. It's now got 28, so obviously I've not done a lot. Do about 1,500 miles per MOT. It's been an absolute joy to drive and a joy to live with. I have discovered a few difficulties owning a car like this. Spare parts, some are readily available and you'll have absolutely no issues getting hold of them, and others are particularly obscure and you really have to scour the internet and make phone calls and send emails and sort of track these parts down. So I've actually only had 2 mechanical issues, and one was a minor one and one was a large one. So the large one was, I went to bleed the brakes, and unfortunately the master cylinder decided, do you know what, I'm not interested in being a master cylinder anymore, and all the seals went. Couldn't find a seal kit, couldn't find a master cylinder. The master cylinder not available, not reproduced. Got the part number, tried everywhere, couldn't get one, and the car was off the road for absolutely ages, weeks, maybe months actually. And I decided, you know what, I've got a local scrapyard near to me. I'm going to go and look for any Alfa or any Fiat car from the late 90s to the early 00s. And I went there. Sorry, the busso just wanted to sing. I went there. Couldn't really find any Alfas. I didn't think they really had any, but they had a few Fiats. Opened the bonnet of all these Fiats, and 3 or 4 cars in, I found a Y-Reg Fiat Bravo 1.2, I think it was. You won't believe this, it had the same master cylinder. Exactly the same. Went into the office and I said to him, how much for this? 25 quid, bit his hand off. Right, let's get one of them. Got it all on, working fine. Since then, I've been scouring the internet again to find another one, and I've got a spare one. Because it could be a bit of a weak point on this car. If I find another one, I'll get one. I know how rare they are. They only seem to be fitted to the V6 engine, 156, for about 2 years maybe, 3 years tops. So sort of 98 to 2000-ish. I know you've got to find someone breaking one, and then you've got to find if it's got the same one on, because some of them don't have the same one on because it's an Alfa. The other minor issue I had was I had trouble getting into gear on a longish journey. I've got a funny feeling I know what it is. I think there's probably air in the clutch cylinder. That's a job I had to, it never failed, but I replaced it because I figured, you know what, if the brake fluid is that bad, when I went to go and change the brake fluid, obviously the clutch fluid is going to be the same. And I was really right to do that, because the fluid had caused major deterioration of the clutch cylinder, so I replaced that. By heck did it drive better after that. Made a hell of a difference. In terms of drivability, it's the perfect daily usable classic. It's fantastic. Other maintenance jobs, these are just maintenance jobs, they're not failures. There was a big one to tick off the list. In 2011, it had the cam belt done 12,000 miles ago. So it was under miles, but over years. I was like, I'm gonna have to do the cam belt. There was nothing wrong with the cam belt, but I did it. And I unearthed some interesting previous mechanical mishaps, shall we say, or negligence. People that don't do their job properly. So I've got a receipt for, in 2011, bearing in mind this was 2011, for £1,000 to remove the engine and replace the cam belt and water pump. Well, you don't have to remove the engine for a start, because I've done it in my own garage as a DIYer with the engine in. And it said replace the water pump. They never replaced the water pump. It was the original plastic impeller water pump from 1998. And it had a hairline crack in it. In fact, it had 2 hairline cracks, which is why they should be replaced. So obviously that kind of annoyed me, because the previous owner was an elderly gentleman and they've ripped him off. I'm not going to name names because it's not fair, but they are still trading. This company is still trading, and I found that really annoying and dishonest of that garage. I don't know what went on, but it wasn't replaced, and you don't need to take the engine out. So I did the water pump, cam belt, dry belt, tensioners, rocker cover gaskets, anything associated with that area is done. I don't have to worry about it for 72,000 miles or 5 years. I bought all of the tools from Totally Alfa. If you've got an Alfa, particularly a 916 GTV, or, you know, there are other Alfas he caters for, like, you know, he is the go-to person. His stuff is fantastic. So you need a 41mm socket to undo the crank bolt. You need a specific set of timing locks, which I'm going to get onto in a minute. And you also need a specific timing tool, which he makes a really good one that you can use to tension up the cam belt. So I did the cam belt for the first time using cam locks off eBay. And I did it all, and the rearward bank camshaft, it lined up, but it didn't line up 100%, but I didn't really think anything of it, and I got it all back together and had it running, and it started up fine. But when the engine was getting hot, it started idling on 5 cylinders, and these engines, they sound perfect when they're idling, and you know, as soon as something's not right, you know that I could tell it wasn't on 6 cylinders at all. So I went to Totally Alfa and I bought a set of their locks. The eBay locks are £20. They are red. They are made in China. My advice, if you own a Busso engined Alfa, please don't buy them. Buy the correct Alfa locks from somewhere like Totally Alfa, which is a genuine UK seller. I'm not sponsored by them in any way, but I recommend their stuff. They did cost £80, but you know what? When I realigned it all up, they sat differently. And now the engine doesn't misfire. It doesn't run on 5 cylinders. It runs on 6 cylinders all the time. So that was obviously a bit annoying. I've replaced the brake discs, not because they were worn, just from an aesthetic point of view. I wasn't that keen on the way they were looking. I know for a fact the rear ones were original. The front ones I think had been changed at some point. But I just wanted it to look good, because I had the highlight of the ownership of this car so far to date in the last 2 years. I've been to a few shows, but I went to the NEC Classic show in last year, 2022, so November 2022. I'd like to thank Club Alfa for allowing me to display the car. It was actually a great experience. And being able to see other people look at my car, opening the bonnet, and just talking to fellow owners more than anything, just about the car and their experiences with Alfas and, you know, such like. And I've been to a lot of other smaller shows, and people don't really know what these are. Everyone knows what a GTA is, but people don't know what a 156 V6 is necessarily. It's a rare and known car unless you're an Alfa enthusiast. So that was nice sharing that with different people. In terms of any other jobs, I did little things like replace the expansion tank because it had faded. I've done a lot of cleaning, just keeping the engine back. When I had the engine apart, I cleaned a lot of the chrome, and a lot of the parts are very difficult to get to unless you've got the inlet manifold off and the associated components. change the air filter, stuff like that, you know, oil goes without saying. I only do the oil every 2 years. It's probably coming up wanting an oil change now, but the oil's still clean. But because I do so low mileage in it, I'm not going to do it every year because that's just a pointless exercise. So obviously been driving it for the last few minutes, the engine is up to temperature. It's got 25-year-old shocks and springs, which are very comfortable, but this car doesn't, it handles well, but it's not a sports car. So it's obviously got double wishbone suspension on the front and fully independent on the rear. Yeah, that reminds me, I had an MOT advisory on the rear arms. There's 4 of them on the back of this, so I replaced all of them as well. Planning to go on a bit of a big road trip next year, so in the pipeline I will be putting new shocks and springs on it. I've already got some springs and I'm probably going to put pony shocks on it just to make it more compliant. It's not a bad handling car, it's just I think the age of the shocks and the springs and the fact that they're not sport, it compromises the capability of the chassis, because the chassis is actually pretty good. So like I say, the engine's well warmed through now, and it is really a pleasure. This thing just flies. They do not have a dual mass flywheel. I'm convinced this makes a massive difference to the rev capability of the engine. So what I mean by that is, it's a 24 valve 2.5 litre, but it revs like a 2 litre 16 valve. Previously I've owned a Vauxhall Vectra with the same displacement engine with a dual mass flywheel, and I'm of the opinion it probably didn't need one. I'm not really sure why they put one in, because it didn't have the torque figures that would require one. And I found with that, it used to drag until the weight of the car was behind it. So you're talking like 3rd gear and above, it came into its own. This road is horrendous. Wow, there's some bad roads. So I think the capability of this engine, and you know, I don't know if people are aware, but this engine is very sought after for kit cars because of the nature of its revability, and it doesn't have a dual mass flywheel. So when I was at the NEC show, there was a load of Lancia Stratos replica cars, and they all had this engine in it. So a lot of 156s and 166s have probably been taken to the scrapper for the engine, to put the engine in a car like that. But at least the engine lives on. The throttle response on these cars is sublime. Literally, it's electronic throttle. You literally just tap the accelerator, and the way that it's set up, it just goes. There's no hesitation. There's no... it's hard to explain it. It's not like a modern car. You know, modern turbocharged cars, they're crap. I'm sorry. Nothing beats an old school, normally aspirated, relatively large, under-stressed engine. This is obviously 190 horsepower, it's a 2.5 litre, it's just not stressed. It really isn't stressed at all. It's like the 3.2 version of this engine. 250 horsepower. It's not stressed in the slightest. Future plans for the car, I don't have many really. I'm very, very tempted to get a nice set of wheels, but on the other hand, I actually really like the wheels that are on it, and I like the ride as well. This road I'm on's horrendous, but the ride quality feels good. The only wheels I would consider are 17-inch telly dials off a GTV 916. I wouldn't I wouldn't go for anything else whatsoever. I don't think anything else would suit the car. And there is a possibility I might change the roll bar on the back. It's a modification I did previously on a GTV. No, not a GTV, a GT that I had previously, and it made a hell of a difference. But the key thing is to preserve the car, use it, not sparingly, but use it, because cars that aren't used, things go wrong with them. You've got to get them out, you've got to drive them, you've got to blow the cobwebs off, you've got to get them up to temperature, you've got to protect them from the elements, the weather. So this is obviously garaged. I think it's a car for life. I'm not sure I'm going to get rid of it. I may lay it up for a bit and not use it for a year or two, but every year it's going to get an MOT, it's going to come out at some point. But that's just, that is an update on this car. And what a brilliant car it is. It's every time I drive it, it's an occasion. And the wooden steering wheel makes one hell of a difference to the way the car drives. I know that might sound strange. Well, yeah, it's round like any other steering wheel, but it has a better feel than any leather steering wheel I have ever driven. Trust me, I've driven a lot of cars. It's took over 20 years of driving for me to actually drive a car with a wooden steering wheel, and it really is a point of difference to driving this car. I think more manufacturers should have done this, and bravo to Alfa for doing it. Right, that's it. I might do another video before 2 years, because I've failed spectacularly to keep you up to date on this car. But you never know, let's see what happens in the future.